Here's a question for you to ponder. What's the difference between a salesman and a scam artist? OK, time's up. In most cases, the only difference is that a scam artist sells a product that doesn't exist. And when the thing they're pretending to sell promises someone a career for life, it can be doubly devastating. I'm on my way to meet 23-year-old Steve, who's recently been the target of a scam that played on his hopes and dreams. Steve's been unemployed for the last 6 months, but unlike many people his age, he knows exactly what job he wants. You see, since Steve was a little lad, he's dreamt of becoming a lorry driver. Why did you want to be a driver?
It's just something I've always wanted to do since I was a child. I went with a friend of the family when we were young, journeys up north in his truck, so it's just something that's just played with the idea, and obviously now I'm old enough to get my licence. It's something I wanted to do.
In late 2010, Steve decided to try and make his dream a reality, but sadly, that was about to make him a perfect target for a group of con men. If you want to become a lorry driver, you need an HGV licence, and they don't come easy. You need to pass tests, have special training, and even undergo a medical. But there are firms of brokers who can arrange all of this for you for one single fee. Sadly, though, as industry experts have seen, a minority of these brokers have turned out to be nothing more than scam artists.
There are some brokers out there that will just take your money and not deliver any training, full stop.
And unfortunately, the con men are able to exploit the fact that almost anyone can set themselves up as an HGV training company.
A lot of people are not aware that our industry is not regulated at all.
Which makes life a lot easier for the scammer. But as Steve began searching the internet to find an HGV training company, he had no idea he may end up dealing with con men.
First of all, the scams are mainly conducted, or where they attract people initially, is via their websites, where they give people the overwhelming impression that they're both a training company and a recruitment specialist as well. But it's sold as a very easy, fast track to making some serious money.
Steve had a look on the internet and came across a company who, like many firms advertising on the net, said they can organise the whole training process from start to finish.
You take all your details, take the money off you, arrange the theory test and arrange the medical, and then send you to somebody who's got a fleet full of vehicles themselves.
You're looking at a one-stop shop, really?
I was looking to get it done obviously as soon as possible, but also as efficiently as possible, and so they could organise it all for me.
Did you find any recommendations or endorsements from anybody else?
They did say on the website, it did have on the bottom a logo for the RHA, which is the Road Haulage Association. So that, I looked at it and I thought, I've heard of the Road Haulage Association.
Did you then check with the Road Haulage Association themselves to find out if they were associated with them?
I just didn't think to do it immediately. It wasn't. I had no concerns at that time.
In fact, nothing Steve found in his initial research gave him any cause for concern. And when he spoke to the company he'd seen online, he found himself talking to a very friendly salesman.
They are a slick sales and marketing company who employ salespeople who are, in the most part, commission-driven. And you will find that they will tell you whatever you want to hear in order to get your credit card details.
Let's talk about the first conversation you had with the company we're talking about.
He was quite helpful, and I thought he wasn't very pushy. He wasn't like, can you make a payment, or... I suppose it put my mind at rest that I'm speaking to someone who's interested in me as a person rather than just how I'm going to pay for it.
The fact that he's shown an interest in you, that immediately gets you more engaged than you were previously. The salesman's friendly approach worked, and Steve soon felt completely at ease. Now, there are several stages to becoming an HGV driver. First, you need to have a medical. Then you need to get a provisional licence and take a theory test. And finally, you must do a minimum of 5 days practical training. The company Steve had spoken to said they could arrange all of this and more.
Everything from him filling out, obviously, all the forms on my behalf, to booking me theory test, to booking me medical, to booking me practical lessons. From start to finish, he would take care of everything.
And it got better, because at the end of the training, Steve was told his dream of becoming a truck driver could quickly become a reality.
He's also explained that, you know, as soon as I do my practical training, they've got contracts with high street stores who I'll get, you know, driving experience with, or even possible employment with.
In short, Steve's new friend was telling him everything he wanted to hear. But what Steve didn't realise was that it was all an illusion, designed to make him part with his cash.
These brokers, in reality, they employ no instructors, they have no training vehicles, and the jobs that they advertise on their website are normally taken from other websites who are agencies, recruitment agencies, so they're not a recruitment specialist either.
The salesman had already done enough, though, to convince Steve that his company was the one to go for, and they began talking money.
And did they put a price on that at that stage?
Yeah, it was £2,400.
How did that compare to other schools?
It was quite similar to most other companies that I spoke to.
What we've got is someone who he's friendly enough, he's clear, you've got a course which looks like it's the real deal, and a price that's in the right bracket.
Yeah, that was it, yeah.
Perfectly convincing.
Perfectly convincing, yeah.
The company had Steve exactly where they wanted him, and he signed up to their course. They didn't ask for the full $2,400 up front. Instead, they asked Steve for a £200 deposit so that they could go ahead and arrange his theory test and medical. But unbeknownst to Steve, this was a textbook scam move.
The medical has probably cost you about £50. The theory test has probably cost you about the same as well. So they may just hook you along to buy a little bit more time. And in the scheme of things, you're talking about £100, possibly out £2,500. So they're looking at the bigger picture.
Within days of paying his deposit, Steve was sent off for his medical, which he passed with flying colours.
And then all of this goes off to the DVLA.
He signs the form, there's a little stamp he stamped it with, and
All feels quite official.
all feels quite official.
Once the DVLA had received the results of Steve's medical, they sent him his provisional licence. Steve was now officially on the road to becoming a truck driver. Initially, Steve had only paid £200 towards the £2,400 cost of his training, and he knew he'd have to start paying off the balance. But the company seemed happy for him to pay in instalments, so before he moved on to the theory test stage of his training, Steve paid a further £500.
Then you're 700 quid in, absolutely no reason to think there's anything wrong.
No, not at all.
Steve spent the next few weeks revising for his theory test, but a few days before the exam, the training company were back on the phone, and they were about to test Steve's faith in them. Having made Steve feel like he was making good progress towards his HGV licence, the salesman now wanted to know how Steve was going to pay his outstanding balance, which was over 1,500 quid.
I explained that my mum, you know, will borrow me the money. He then just asked for a conversation with my mum. I just thought he wanted to talk to whether she's going to set up a direct debit or, you know, some sort of payment. I went upstairs, I passed the phone to my mum, I went upstairs, come back down, and she told me that she paid it in full.
Steve had assumed his mum would carry on paying in smaller instalments, but the salesman had persuaded her otherwise, and the company now had the full £2,400.
That's a shock.
It was a shock to me, but at the time it was a good shock, because she'd put a faith in me, so she just said she released a payment of £1,500.
Steve felt indebted to his mum, but with the course paid up in full, he could now really focus on getting his licence.
So your theory test comes,
Theory test comes.
you nail it.
Yeah, I nail it, yeah.
Nice one.
Yeah.
But the feeling wasn't to last. Steve was now waiting for a date to start his practical driving training, and the salesman who he'd started to think of as a mate suddenly didn't seem so keen to chat.
So then I'd constantly ring him, you know, once, 2, 3, 4 times a day. They wouldn't answer. He'd then answer and explain that, you know, oh, I'm not in the office at the moment. Can you call us? I'll call you back tomorrow. Tomorrow would come, wouldn't have a phone call, be sitting here, you know, doing nothing.
After another week of fobbing Steve off, someone else from the company rang to explain that the salesman he'd been dealing with had been away from the office for personal reasons.
Now, surely at this point you must be getting mardy, to put it finely, because they've got all your money. The guy you've been dealing with seems to have vanished. The bulk of their outlay is yet to come.
Obviously, my suspicions just, when he explained that he's not in work anymore, because he's having personal problems, or it was sort of, what can you do about that? You can't, doubt him. I'm not going to say he's a liar or anything. I just said then, can you arrange it? Can you do it on his behalf? At
this stage, are you also thinking, hold on, this is not my money that's been spent here? How much of an effect does that have on the way you're thinking?
When you borrow money off somebody to pay for something, obviously you want to pay him back as soon as possible.
And it's your mum.
And it's my mum, yeah.
But Steve was about to find out that the trust he and his mum had placed in the company had been cruelly abused. The new person Steve was dealing with would no longer answer his phone, and because the company's office was hundreds of miles away, Steve couldn't go and knock on their door. So he went back online to see if he could find any information.
I come across a website with quite a bit of information.
What kind of information?
Not good information. Not information I wanted to see. When I read that, it was just, my heart sank. It was just, why did I not see this before? And it never come up before.
He'd found a forum where others were complaining that they'd been cheated out of thousands of pounds by the same company in the same way. They'd got as far as their theory test, but when it was time for practical training, the company went quiet.
Every time you're reading it, you just feel sick, and then you wake up and you go on your computer just to see if you did actually read it the day before, and obviously it's still there.
So as you're reading this website full of comments that match exactly your experience, pretty much, what's going through your mind?
If all this is true, which I hoped it wasn't, what do you do? How am I going to have to go in the house and tell my mum that about this information, that money you borrowed me, it's gone?
But Steve's fears were slowly being confirmed. He phoned the Road Haulage Association, who the company had claimed had given them a stamp of approval. But the RHA had never heard of them, so Steve reported the firm to trading standards and the police. He now had to come to terms with the fact that his dream of becoming a lorry driver was well and truly parked.
The hopes of, obviously, my career in the future of driving HGVs is slowly starting to vanish. It's now, it's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's miles away now. It was gone.
Tell me about the 5 minutes before you explained to your mum what had happened to her money.
I come in, and I remember she was by the back door washing. I don't know, I just joked and I just said, this company, I think it's had me on. And she's like, what do you mean? Putting things in the washing machine. I'm like, yeah. And then it wasn't until I actually showed her all the information where she was like, okay, right, where do we go from here?
It's now up to the authorities to investigate the rogue firm, but it's extremely unlikely that Steve and his mum will get any of their money back. But at least Steve has had the courage to come forward and share his story, because many who are caught out by this scam wouldn't. And it's a serious concern for the HGV industry.
I work for a training company as well. What distinguishes us from them, if you look at a website, not a lot. At the moment, all we can do is try and warn people. Hundreds of people are being ripped off.
A lot of people think that scams are for the elderly, the vulnerable, people that don't really know what they're doing. You don't fall into any of those sets. So what happened?
I don't know. I'm always telling me nana about, people ringing her up about, like cold calling her, trying to sell her things. I'm always telling her, no, don't fall for that. And I'm always watching, shows on the telly, and I think, how have you fell for that? I'll never fall for that. And then, obviously, you have.
Can I suggest why it happened?
Yeah.
because you really wanted something, someone offered it to you, they made it look like you were going to get it, they conned you by getting to your mum, and then the thing that they were offering didn't exist.
No.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's how they did it.
In a nutshell.
If you want to be a lorry driver, how can you protect yourself against the scam artists and dodgy brokers who will leave you stranded on the hard shoulder?
The first thing is be aware of companies who claim that they have 25, 30, 40 training centres around the UK. The simple fact of the matter is there are no national HGV training companies.
If you can, try and see the company or training centre for yourself.
Visit the training company, don't part with any money over the phone. If it sounds too good to be true, it normally is. And our best piece of advice is, if you're serious about a career as a truck driver, then go direct to a reputable, established training company in your area.
And there are plenty of them around. It's just a case of doing your research and speaking to independent organisations who can offer advice. Sadly, all of this is too late for Steve.
You said before about like the elderly being vulnerable, you know, 'cause people turn up said I was being vulnerable, but people out of work are vulnerable as well because they need, you know, like myself, I want, you know, desperately, that's what I wanted to do from an early age. So they've sold me an idea that I've obviously took, and I thought, yeah, and that's how they've got me.